Welcome to The Change Agent, the podcast that aims to help you become a more effective leader, smarter project manager, and a high-impact contributor to your organization. Each and every episode gives you actionable strategies and perspectives in leadership, project management, and team building so that you and your team can deliver real value, exceed expectations, and rise above the rest. Follow me every week for new content. I hope you're looking forward to today's episode as much as I am, so let's get ready and let's lead. Hi everyone, welcome back and welcome to Season 2, Episode 9. I am your host Eric, and today we're going to be continuing our adventure in managing the project by focusing on staying on track. This is project control in action is what we're going to be really talking about today. And we're going to talk about some 7 segments of leading this project as it gets started into success. Now in our last episode, which was Episode 8 of course, we talked about moving from plan to action, the execution phase where everything starts coming to life. You've already initiated things and you're kind of getting underway now. And today we're going to be shifting gears to focus on what happens next. And then this is focusing on keeping the project aligned with all of the expectations, being responsive, keeping things under control, and remaining agile. Having agility in the project management scheme that you're using as that work unfolds and moves throughout the project lifecycle. We're also going to be ensuring that we align leadership traits and concepts to these things, right? Because it's important that you are not just bossing the project or you're just not managing the project, you're leading the project as you move throughout. Now, let's be honest, once the project execution begins, things start moving really fast. Plans that you've set in place get challenged and priorities start to shift and people start making other decisions around you that may impact the way that you expected to lead the project, and now you have to shift things a little bit. This would be things like stakeholders change direction, they change their priorities, they change what things they want in the backlog, they change features, they change funding, you name it. And as the project manager, your job is to navigate all of that without losing momentum or morale in your team. Now, this episode is really about monitoring the right things and controlling what you can't, and leading in real time with the clarity and flexibility that your team would need to succeed. It's important that you implement these ideas in order to ensure that your team feels like they have a direction and they have that motivation and they have that purpose. So let's go ahead and get started with the first segment out of 7 today. We're going to try to keep it around 30 minutes or so. And this first one is what monitoring and controlling really means. If you've been studying the PMBOK guide, the project management body of knowledge in preparation for maybe an exam on the PMP certification, project management professional, you'll be very familiar with monitoring and controlling. Now, monitoring and controlling a project is not just about micromanaging items within the task. It's about staying informed. It's about making adjustments as you move throughout the execution phase. And it's about protecting the project's value. You want to be able to deliver value consistently and reliably throughout your project. Now, according to the PMBOK Guide 7 edition, this phase of monitoring and controlling stuff is really about primarily 5 things, right? The first one will be monitoring the project's performance. This is where you're really looking at how you're performing over what you expected, so your actual performance over the baseline, and there's a key performance indicators that you could use. There are some, you can go and check them out in the PMBOK Guide, as this show doesn't have enough time to go through every element within the PMBOK Guide, but you can go look at them. There's performance indicators and ways that you can measure those, and there are even formulas that you can use to help measure your performance and know whether you're performing where you expected and getting better, or whether you're not performing as well. And that helps give you those indications and warnings that something might be wrong or that everything is going great. And let's say that everything's going great. This phase is also about assessing your project, the progress against the objectives, right? So it's not so much performance-based, it's whether or not you're delivering what your objectives are. So in many cases, especially in government contracting, you'll have a list of contract deliverables, also called CDRLs, CDRLS. And these contract deliverables are things that are required, right? If you hire someone to build a fence in your backyard, there are going to be specific deliverables, primarily the fence. And in government contracting and other things, your deliverables may be things like a monthly status report or software users manuals or whatever they may be, software itself. And so you're going to be assessing your project, the project's progress against deliverables of those objectives. Another phase focus is identifying variances from the plan. It's important that you understand how to recognize and track variances from the plan. Your plan is your baseline. And so as you move through the project's life cycle, you're going to want to control variance. This could be project performance. There's a baseline for that. So whether you're exceeding or not quite meeting that expected baseline, there's a variance. How much performance are you missing or how much are you exceeding? How many deliverables have you delivered against the baseline's plan? How many are you on track? You should not be delivering items and assets to a customer where they're not actually under contract, right? That's out of scope deliverable, so you don't want to do that. But you want to track financials, right? Are you burning hotter than you planned or cooler than you planned? Meaning, are you spending more money or less money than you expected from the baseline of your financial projections? Another focus of this monitoring and controlling area is managing that change and any other change that comes around. We've already noted many times that change is inevitable and it is something that you have to deal with. So how are you managing that change, right? And then lastly, making timely decisions to realign everything as you need it. It's important that you take action where action is required. So if you have changes that are happening, then you're going to want to make sure you're managing and making those decisions in a timely manner. Sitting on a decision is oftentimes a good thing to do if you have a very sensitive situation that you're dealing with, but in some cases, especially if they're bad situations, sitting on those decisions while you do want to make informed decisions, bad news does not get better with time. So you want to make sure that you have things in place to help you see efficiencies in decision making. Now, it's really less about checking the boxes. Now, some of these things that I've talked about just recently here, these 5 areas in this phase, may seem like they're kind of a check the box item, but it's less about that than it is about, are we still delivering the value that we promised and are we doing it effectively? That's really what you're trying to accomplish here, is to answer that question. And it's not just about the rigidity of a project, how streamlined it is against these step-by-step project tasks and these things that you're going to do, these actions that you're going to do, but it's really about vigilance. Are you really sticking with the idea that you're delivering value and tracking these things in a way that you can and monitoring and controlling all of this as a plan? You're not in a project management role to enforce things as if you're reading it from a rule book. You're there to guide that team and lead that team based on the evolving conditions within the project. So you're leading it, right? You're not telling people what to do and then walking away and giving them no direction, not being there when they need to be heard. It's about being a part of the team and collaboratively and collectively achieving the goals that you've set in place for yourself and the team. Segment 2, we want to talk about leading with awareness. Now, this part is oftentimes one of the most important aspects that people often forget is being aware. Now, the best project managers in this phase are hyper aware. And by that, I mean they are watching progress, they're watching the people, and they're watching them move with purpose. There are some cases, and you may have seen this in your own professional lives or even personal lives, where you have leaders that simply tell you what to do, and they are less aware about the people than they are about the progress. They'll come and they'll ask you, how are you making out on this particular task that I've assigned you, without asking you how you're doing first. So as a leader, we want to make sure that we understand our people are our first and foremost asset. They're the most important things we have because nothing's going to be possible without them. So try to start your conversation off with, hey, how are you? Is everything going okay? And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the only question you need to ask. But there are some three primary, what I like to look at is three primary areas that you could use to help you lead with awareness. The first one will be checking in regularly with your team. A team leader or a project manager who is not engaging their team and stakeholders and everybody involved regularly is doomed to either one, fail, which is probably the worst case scenario, of course, but experience some severe challenges along the project. Make it about collaboration, not about surveillance. It doesn't do you any good to walk around and peek in the office and look at Eric as he's typing around on the computer, tappity tap tap, and never mention anything. Don't just peek your head in there and look at me and then walk off. Not only is that awkward, but it doesn't demonstrate any leadership capability whatsoever. So you really want to kind of lean in. Hey, Eric, how are you doing today? Yeah, I'm doing fine. Anything I can do for you? Is everything going well? What challenges do you have? And maybe that's all it is. It takes 30 seconds to really get the feeling that someone's doing well or could use a little bit of help. Or maybe they just want to chat with you. The next one you can do, you can keep your finger on the pulse of stakeholder sentiment. This is how the stakeholders above you, around you, and below you are all feeling. Are they still aligned to the things that are happening? Are they still supportive? Are their expectations about what the project will deliver drifting out? Are they changing? Who knows? And this is why it's important for you to keep up with them, right? And then lastly, you want to make time to review progress. And it's not just about, Eric, did you complete task 1 today? And now are you moving to task 3? It's about what's the progress, what's working, what's not working, what's stuck. And these are things that if you've been listening closely, and I hope you have, while paying attention to your driving skills, it may sound like a team sync kind of script. When you are working in an agile methodology, which is the adaptive project methodology and framework, one of the questions you'll ask in your daily stand-ups, which are now called team syncs as of Safe 6.0, it'll be, what have you done? What are you doing today? What did you do yesterday? And then what challenges do you have? And so that's kind of what you'll see the theme of these things being. And so as the PMI had moved through the PMP life cycle, this project body of knowledge, management body of knowledge, this framework of doing this rigid predictive methodology and project management of step 1, step 2, step 3 has now really taken on a role and a flavor of agile practices. So your adaptive methodologies. And so as you go in and you lead with awareness, you're going to want to be talking with your team regularly. You're going to want to keep a pulse on your stakeholders, and you're going to want to review progress, but not checking off task completion. And so remember, you can't course correct the things that you can't see. So when you check in with your team, you're getting visibility on the things that need correction, right? You're watching those. If you're a sailing fan, you'll have these telltales that sit on the sail. They're taped or sewn into the sail, the mainsail, or even the jib at the front sail. And if those things are flying horizontally perfectly, then your wind is good and your sails are trimmed out well. And that's what you're looking for in your project. You want to see that those telltales are flat and level, right? So that you're not sailing with untrimmed sails. So don't build your systems so that people can just simply see things. They want to make sure that you keep them lean. You want to make sure that you have people first mentality and that things are going well. And so there are some questions that you can ask yourself about that can help you monitor and kind of keep a pulse on all of these things. They're not rocket science questions. They're questions like, are we ahead or behind schedule and why? And asking yourself why you're ahead of schedule is important. It may seem like a really good thing, like, oh my gosh, we're a week ahead of schedule. And you go and brief that. As a senior manager, I would say, why are you ahead of schedule? What's happened and what have you, what corners have you cut? Maybe. Is there a quality step missing? Did you miss a step? Why are you ahead of schedule? It could be, your answer may be, well, I've put more resources on the project to get it ahead of schedule, which increases cost. So my response to you will be, what does your financial health look like now that you've added additional resources, increased the cost of the project to get it ahead of schedule? I mean, was crashing the schedule, which is what that's called, when you add more resources to get to a specific point in your progress, it will add cost. And where does that, now are you running hot? Are you burning more money than you have? So this is real-time leadership. Is the team confident? Are the risks that we flagged showing signs of becoming issues? Are we tracking them? Who owns it? These are the things you want to be asking yourself. And so these are all going to be based on some metrics that you collect. So let's look into segment 3, which is exactly that, metrics that matter. So metrics is based on data. And because data is available almost endlessly now, you got to remember that data itself, just all by itself, is only useful if it helps drive the decisions that are going to help move your project forward. Any extraneous data or noise is something that you're going to want to remove. So there are 3 basic types of metrics that you could be using to monitor your project's performance, and we'll talk about these 3 right now. The first one is called the performance metrics. This is your schedule variance. Is your schedule moving ahead of schedule? Are you behind schedule, or are you right on schedule? Cost variance. This is, are you burning more money than you have? Are you also burning less money? Are you running cool? And so it's really important that you have access to all of the metrics that you need and all of the data that you need in order to effectively track the schedule variance and the cost variance. So those are all really good. Now, the next one is, are we on time? Are we on budget? And are we on scope? And you can say, yep, we sure are. We're on time, we're on budget, and in scope. So that's all really good ideas and really good indicators of how your project is moving from a performance perspective. Next one will be value metrics. Value metrics are things like, are we still aligned with the outcomes that we committed to deliver? Are we tracking the delivery of the value that we said we would? And are the stakeholders that we have, are they still bought into the things that we want to do? Do they still believe in the value statements that we have? And do they still believe that the things that we're delivering will be valuable to them and their stakeholders? And then lastly are the health metrics of your project. These are things like team morale, stakeholder engagement, the acceptance of specific risk levels. How is the team feeling? What is their energy level? All of these things matter. And so when you're looking at performance, that's how your project is performing, of course. When you're looking at value, it's whether or not people are still see what you're doing is valuable, and you're tracking metrics that give you those things. And then your health metrics, which are the, is a team still excited and motivated to perform against the requirements. So tracking these gives you a real 360-degree view of the project. You can use things like dashboards and burn down charts and weekly check-ins, whatever might work for you to track these things. Will help you give your leadership insights into how that project's performing, and it gives you the comfort of knowing that things are going well, and then it will alert you early if things are not. Okay. But don't get lost into the things that are like vanity metrics. Measure and show and rely on things that inform actions. If you have a metric that you're being collected, how many times Eric went to the kitchen, and that doesn't involve some form of decision making that informs you, then you don't want to track it. It's a wasted bit of work. You don't want to have that data. So collect all the data that you can, remove all the stuff that you don't need, and use that data in all those 3 different metric forms, the performance, value, and health, to help inform your project management approach. Now, segment 4 we're going to talk about now is managing change without the chaos, because managing can often be, some people say it's like herding cats. Depends on your profession. It depends on where you're at, depends on the age of your team, the experience of your team. It's also based on your experience and how well you manage. But change itself is primarily what causes chaotic situations. And so change is inevitable. This is not something that you're going to be able to get away from. And whether it's a shifting priority, someone adjusting the scope, statement, or you have a resourcing and staffing issue, or you have a funding problem, you need to manage all of that without derailing the project. And you can't let those things, changes in those things, derail that whole entire project. So it's really important that you keep an eye out on these changes and you have a very viable change management process, and you have a change control board to help inform you on the impact of changes. So let's look at how we can manage change without letting it derail that project that we talked about. So the first part is establishing a clear change control process. This is having a change control board, a change management expert on your team, whatever the cases are, but you need to make sure that everyone knows how to propose, evaluate, and approve a change. So when a change comes in, it goes into, and this is just a high level idea. I mean, not all change control processes tend to differ in some ways, but you could have a change come in, it goes into a register of some sort, it goes before a weekly change control board where it's discussed, and then someone approves it. Maybe the chair of the change control board approves or denies the change. But in that process, there are going to be elements of assessing the risk, assessing the impact on the performance of the team, resources that's needed to implement the change, what impacts the change have on the value. So it's just many different things you want to be looking at. And so you can develop a list of things that matter to you when it comes to change, because each project's different. Each thing is unique, right? Because that's a key word for what a project is to begin with. And so there, whatever it is that you want to track related to change, are the things that you need to have as topics and assessment phases within your change control process. And then you're going to, of course, as I just mentioned, you're going to evaluate that against the scope, against the schedule, against the cost and the value. So is the change going to improve or derail my scope? My schedule. Is it going to increase my scope, which increases the cost? And will it deliver more value or less value? And then whenever you get all of these things together, you'll collect a narrative around this change, and you'll communicate transparently. So there won't be any silent approvals, and there won't be anyone behind the scenes approving changes without you as the PM knowing about it. This should be a collaborative effort. If people are implementing changes, accepting them, rejecting them, whatever the cases are, and it's in solidarity with the team, that's great. But if it's anonymous and no one knows who's doing all these things, then God knows you gotta wrap that up and get it underway, and get it in control. And then document decisions. Whoever it is that's documenting decisions for the approval or denial of the change, and generally that's the change control board with a chair or some leader there, where there's many different versions, but if it goes through the change control board, it's discussed, and then a board chair approves or denies those things. Usually a technical expert of some sort. Those need to be documented and available for everyone to see. So just remember this: that change isn't the enemy. It's not change, that change itself is bad. It's the unmanaged change that's the killer of a project. So if change comes in, it's not managed, or it's anonymously approved or denied, and you've got the Wild West in your project leadership group, then you need to fix that. Okay. Now let's talk about stakeholders. Segment 5 here, we're going to talk about realigning them. Stakeholders can often change around. Sometimes someone leaves a particular group or organization that was a stakeholder. I've had that many times in my project where I've had a key stakeholder that really had a lot of influence, and that individual left and went to a new office. Now, granted, the office they went to may have been advantageous for me, that even more so than where they were, but because they left, someone replaced them, and now I've got a new stakeholder, and so my realignment of my stakeholders had to happen. So stakeholders are not always going to be sticking around in the same place forever, especially if you have a long-term project that lasts several years. But that doesn't mean that it's a detriment to your project. It may be an improvement. So this particular phase, realigning your stakeholders, is a chance to keep that alignment right and making sure that it's still for the best interest of your project. There are 4 different ways you can really go about doing this for realigning your stakeholders. And so let's talk about these 4 right now. The first one would be to re-engage with the stakeholder, as all of them, as the project evolves. This is just simply engagement of the stakeholders. Almost always, if you're engaging your stakeholders regularly, you're going to get some type of warning that someone's leaving or that someone's arriving. And then you begin to adjust your stakeholder management plan. This is okay. Eric's running the project and he goes to the office, and the PM for the customer side or your customer tells you, hey, we've got a new individual coming in who's going to be managing, kind of keeping a tab on this project more than I was. And so when he or she comes in, we're going to want you to engage them in making sure that you bring them up to speed and get them on track with the project. And you can start asking inquisitive questions like, well, what type of influence will they have? Will they be making funding decisions? These are all things that you could ask. Whatever's relevant for your field, you could be asking questions that are related to that new stakeholder. And then you're going to ensure that you integrate that individual into your stakeholder management plan and begin setting up dates to, as soon as possible, engage that stakeholder. You can invite them to lunch. You could meet them in the office. You could introduce them to a team during a team meeting. And you can ask them what matters to them. Okay, so that you understand exactly what they're looking for as they come in. Making your new stakeholders feel important when they come on board is a really good step to keeping things positive. Likewise, if you have a stakeholder who's leaving, you want to catch them before they run out the door and say, do you have any parting thoughts on how the project was running and what you would have liked to have seen better, and what you think your next replacement will be, and what they would like to see. Second, you're going to want to share performance data that's something that's digestible, like what's going well, what's at risk, and what needs their input. Keep it really simple, 3 or 4 points for the stakeholders to be able to engage you and give you things that are informative. And then third, you're going to want to invite that feedback and make them feel involved as you move through the project, not just in step 2 where you're getting performance information from them, but you're going to want to keep them involved, give them that sense of responsibility, and keep them with you as you move throughout the project life cycle. And then lastly, any concerns that are brought up, you're going to want to address them as fast as possible. That's the early phase of that. If you sense any dissatisfaction building in your stakeholders, do not wait for a crisis to happen before it's addressed. Once someone gives you that telltale sign, remember the sailing analogy, if that telltale sign starts to go up or down, your sails are not getting trimmed, your stakeholders getting misaligned, and you're going to want to get in there and engage with them and ask them immediately, like, hey, you mentioned this, you weren't really pleased with that, or you feel like that this might be a problem. Can we expand on that? And let's work together to figure out what our approach could be so I can adjust. And they're going to appreciate you having that type of keen insight onto the project and keeping them informed and making them a collaborative part of the project management lifecycle. This is a good segue into segment 6, which is keeping the team engaged and focused. Now, if your team is working well and everything is going great, then perfect. You're doing well at this. But in some cases, many project managers don't engage their team enough, or they don't keep them focused on what's going on. I recently was listening to a project manager talk about a situation which he had to have conversations with other team members on his team because they were doing work that was out of scope and they weren't being focused on the things that were under their purview and in scope, the things they were under contract for, because it wasn't as exciting as this, hey, look at that over there, I want to go do that. Even though it was out of scope and another contractor had that, they still did it. So keeping the team engaged and focused is really important. In this phase, you cannot let project fatigue set in. This is you getting tired by being overworked or being under-challenged. Now, the excitement of that initiation is over, and the novelty of the execution phase is kind of fading out. And this can happen even if your finish line for the project is years away. I just recently told someone during a conversation that the most exciting part for me on my last project was my first year or 2 out of 5, because that was the period when I was challenged. That was the period when it was all new to me. That was the period when I watched team members grow. That was the period when the stakeholders got super excited about the cool things we were delivering to them and the value we were delivering to them. By the time the project matured and we got towards the end, year 5, it was just an everyday thing. There was really nothing exciting going on. We were maintaining the status quo. We had innovated where we could, and it started to create problems because we became fatigued or complacent. We started developing new innovation that we were maybe not tasked to do, and it created a bunch of small unfinished things. And so we ended up getting rid of that. But the excitement is over, and you've now got the problem of keeping that team engaged, keeping them focused as you move through, and everybody's become very comfortable with the project. And so there are 4 primary things you can do to sustain the energy and the focus of your team. First, you want to keep your communication crisp. Remove any unnecessary meetings, but making sure that everyone is staying connected. Number 2, you want to reinforce the purpose of the project. As you have these weekly team meetings and as you're engaging people, now would be the time as your project has become mature and it's controlled and everything's on a nice even keel, you could maybe implement some happy hours. And while you're there at the happy hour, right before everybody starts having a smashing drink, engage them and say, let's remind ourselves of the purpose of the project. You guys are killing it. This is why we're doing it. Okay, remind the team why the work that you're doing matters. Number 3, you want to celebrate progresses. Even small wins are fuel for motivation. So as your team moves through, if they get a small win, categorize it and take it for what it's worth. And then 4th, you're going to want to create space for people to have a voice. Make sure that you encourage your team members to surface out what's blocking them, to bring forth challenges and ideas. And when those people who are being engaged by you start to feel seen, they feel heard, and they have a connection to the purpose, then they will remain engaged even when the times are tough or when they're slow, like it's just another day at the office. Okay. And then lastly, segment 7, we want to adjust our project management approach and strategies without any apologies. Oftentimes you may feel like that you need to apologize or you feel sorry. Hey, I'm so sorry I'm changing this. Don't. This is a leadership trait that people have to get around. The ability to adjust how things are going without feeling guilty about it. Now, if something's not working, you have to change it. It's your responsibility to change it. You're not married to the original plan in the project. You're married to the outcome of the project. So if you feel like I can't change this, everybody's set in their ways, especially the older people. Myself, I'm putting myself in that bucket. I don't really like change. I personally do. But in some cases, people may say, oh, well, we've been doing it like this forever and it's working just fine. I don't want to change it, because change does introduce some bit of anxiety, right? If you don't change it and the project fails, it was your responsibility. And if people found out that you knew that you needed to change it and you didn't, that's even worse. So remember, you're not married to that original plan. You're married to the outcome of the project. And leaders who hesitate to pivot end up wasting time, money, they drain morale, it creates friction. You begin to have this impression to others that you don't know how to lead, or that you're tired of leading, or that even worse, you don't want to lead. So own your decisions on why you're changing things, explain why, and keep the team moving. Ask for input on changes too. If you have some ideas, solicit ideas from your team. Remember, you are not the manager of tasks. You are a leader of people navigating the change, moving the project, and guiding it towards delivering the value. So let's do a quick recap of the conversation that we've had today. Monitoring and controlling isn't just about locking the things down. It's about staying awake at the wheel, making sure that you're using the right information, that it's valuable information, and you're removing that noisy data, and that you're leading with awareness of what's happening around with the people. The key things I want you to remember as we close this thing out is don't wait for a fire to check out if the smoke detectors are working. Monitor these things proactively. Keep in front of all the situations by engaging your stakeholders, by engaging your team. Use meaningful metrics, not just data, but insights. And most of the time, projects will have some form or mechanism to help you see the insights of your project to determine how it's performing and how your financials are and how your people are feeling. Make sure that you control your change with clarity, not fear. Change is not a bad thing. Unmanaged change is. Stay close to your stakeholders and make sure that you keep them aligned with what's going on the project, and make sure you align your project to your stakeholders so this alignment happens often. Making sure that you keep your team engaged, visible, and supported. And above all things, make sure that you adjust things on your project with confidence, because the most effective project managers don't just deliver the plan, they guide the journey. And that, my friends, is your job now. That's it for this episode. If you found it helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure to leave a review. Don't forget to share this show with your friends and colleagues and provide us some recommendations on how we can improve the podcast. And if you have any specific topics you'd like to discuss, send them our way. If you'd like more information on how to engage with me directly, you can head over to kalina-vision.com. That's KALYN as in Nancy A-vision.com. And you can also catch me on YouTube at Beyond the Glare or your favorite podcast platform to learn more and see how we can help you and your team get to the next level. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time.